Good morning, everyone. This is Ashumit, and I want to welcome all of you in today's webinar on the poem The Thought Fox by Ted Hughes. And we shall start at 10, which is the official time, and we will wait for participants. We would wait for participants to join. And so, this is the last section of the webinar that we are going to complete. We are going to complete today, and there were few problems, technical problems that came up while we were conducting the webinar on the announced date. So we changed the dates, and we have come up with the date that is 25th October, which is today. That is today. And so all of you are welcome here, and those who are watching, they're requested to share so that their friends can also watch the webinar. So these are the free series of webinar. We would soon be launching the new paid and complete series of webinars pertaining to different streams in English literature and other subjects as well. So coming back today, what we are going to do is we will try to understand the poetry, that is The Thought Fox by Ted Hughes. And this poem is quite amusing. It might look like some metaphysical elements smearing onto the understanding while we learn this poem, while we'll study this poem. So this poem is all about the inspiration, how an inspiration comes to a poet to write a poetry, and there is a metaphorical indication, metaphorical symbols used by Ted Hughes to explain this very fact. And we shall start at 10, which is the announced time, and all of you are requested to share the live version of this poem being explained. So before getting into the poem, we'll learn something about Ted Hughes as well, like what was his literary taste, where did he studied, what was he basically what was his persona, okay, what was his thought processes, where he was born, and so that, and we shall see all that, and so that we can get a feel of the thoughts from where this poem has originated. And he's very famous, like he's the one who has written the Iron Man. He has edited many books, poetry books, of course, and he has been he married Sylvia Plath. She's an American poet, very famous confessionist poet, and they settled in USA. So this we will see, so that we get a better hold on the poet's thoughts and thought processes, so that we understand the poem better. and we shall be starting soon around 10. And if my voice is audible, please let me know. If my voice is audible, kindly let me know. So this would be a brief session as we are only covering one poetry. So probably half an hour, 20 minutes or 45 minutes will be the duration. Kindly let me know if my voice is audible or not. And then we shall start. So basically the poet likes anthropology, okay, and he studied the same in the college. So there are themes that we can find in the poems which are quite naturally reflecting the poet's liking and disliking of his studies. Like he would write about nature, particularly animals, and he's fascinated by animals, and that's why he has, used animal or the symbols. Yes, animals as symbols to represent some thought in the poem. So in this poem as well, he has used one animal, and if you look at the title, the thought fox, you'll understand what the animal is. What the animal is, that is fox. So he's used fox metaphorically to make us understand something, and we shall see what is that. So yes, the Thought Fox by Ted Hughes. Ted Hughes is a very famous British poet. He married Sylvia Plath, but somehow they got divorced. Sylvia Plath committed suicide, and he did not write poetry for 3 years after her death. And he has been accused of censoring the works of his wife, and so he's fascinated by anthropology. That is what we have already discussed. So let us start. So this is the list of the topic that we will be covering today. That is the poem, The Thought Fox by Ted Hughes, where we will be looking at a simpler explanation or the summary, then theme of the poem, rhyme scheme if any, and then figures of speech is which are used. So I think this is good for anyone, like those who are interested in English literature, they can definitely come and watch. And it is as good as for the people who are doing MA and BA in English literature. If this poetry is in their course, so this would be a beneficial webinar for them. Not only this, those who are doing PhD on poetry, they would also benefit from this aspect of poem. So Ted Hughes is a very famous man, British poet. He's called as British laureate, British poet laureate. And like in the previous webinar, we talked about American poet Robert Frost. So he was also the poet laureate, and his poetry, The Road Not Taken, is read in most of the ceremonies, national ceremonies or private ceremonies. And this in this webinar, the poet is Ted Hughes. He is British, and although he married American poet Sylvia Plath, and particularly okay, so let's start with the introduction of the poet himself. So he's a British poet. So his name is Edward J. Hughes, and Ted Hughes, you can say it's his pen name. He was born on August 17, 1930, Yorkshire, England, and he died 1998, London. So like he died recently, and his poetry, the themes of his poetry would be nature, love and romance, mortality, friendly relationship, religion. So in nature, he gave emphasis on animals, okay, which is reflected in most of his collections. Okay, so he went to Pembroke College, Cambridge, where he got fascinated and learned folklore and anthropology. Okay, and he married American poet Sylvia Plath, and after the marriage, his first volume of verse were published. Okay, his first volume of verse was published, that was called as The Hawk in the Rain. Okay, and due to some unfortunate emotional troubles and all that with his wife Sylvia Plath, she committed suicide, and he stopped writing for 3 years, and he has been accused of censoring her writings, and he committed that he has destroyed many of her writings. He has torn many of her journals. Okay, and he wrote many books for children. For example, Iron Man, which was, I think, also made a movie, and he also edited many of the poems like Rattle Rag, which Seamasini is also a poet, and he had also published a selection of his poems which had animals, okay, and as natural elements. Okay, and it was published as Ted Hughes' Bestiary in 2014. So this is the brief introduction. So nature, love, romance, mortality, family relation, religion are few of the themes on which he used to write poetry. And in this poem there is a reference to an animal as well, because we can see like he has published a separate version known as Ted Hughes' Bestiary, where all the themes and things are related to animals. So in nature, as I told you, he also depicted animals, as he's a folklore and anthropology lover. So there are traces of folklore, okay, the superstition and the short stories that he might have learned, folk tales that he might have read. So there are characters and there are stories which he has depicted in many of his poems. And in this poem also there is such a depiction that we can find, like fox. Fox is a depiction. If you read, you'll understand why he has used fox here. Okay. So let us start this and try to understand the poem. So the Thought Fox is basically a poem where he has metaphorically compared the fox to a inspiration or thinking or a thought or a poetry, okay, which is going to come to his mind through a hole, probably that's a supernatural hole, and then he will print this to a paper, or he will write this to a paper. So this is the theme of the poetry. So he has said it's a fox. Okay, why it is a fox? Because thinking, you can understand how the herd thinks, like it is not stable, it is glittering all the time, moving from here and there, okay, and not standing still. For one time I'm here and the next time I'm in USA, and the next moment I'm there and the next moment so on. So that's why he might have compared the fox to the thought, okay, or the inspiration, because there are many inspiration, there are many thoughts, and this poem describes the process whereby a poet generates the abstract idea, okay, in the brain till he writes the same idea in the form of poetry onto the paper. So there is some place, some server or some place from where the thoughts gets into the mind of the poet and then he writes down. So the thought is compared to the fox, and the fox is the thought. So let us understand with the first paragraph. Now the first line of the first paragraph of the poet is, imagine this midnight moment's forest. Okay, I imagine this midnight's forest, something else is alive beside the clock's loneliness and this blank page where my fingers move. So there is no set rhyming pattern throughout the poem, although there are few, but at the same time there are multiple usages of figures of speeches. So I imagine this midnight moment's forest, something else is alive beside the clock's loneliness and this blank page whereby where my blank page where my fingers move. So he is telling us that I have imagined that the midnight moments is a forest, okay, and in that forest, okay, in that scenario there is something alive, okay. So there is something, okay, he hasn't understood what it is, okay, and he says beside the clock's loneliness, when there is nobody in the room, he's woken at around 3 or 4 p.m, nobody in the room, his thoughts are like the forest, his mind is like a forest, and in that forest, in that that is there is a clock as well which is very lonely, and there is a page, blank page, where he is going to write something and his fingers are moving on the page. So beside all that there is something which he hasn't perceived, which he hasn't understood till now. So in his imagination as a forest, okay, there is something else is alive. The else is the inspiration, else is the thought, else is the topic where the poem will be written down, or the idea. It's talking about the idea where the poem can come down to his mind and then he will write. So besides all the things that are present, the clock's loneliness, his fingers moving on the blank page. Okay, or in the forest there is something alive, that is the idea which he hasn't understood right now, or which like at this point of moment is, he knows that there is some idea but he hasn't understood, his mind hasn't interpreted it. Okay, so this is the first part, this is the first step, where a poet wants to write something and he imagines, yes, there is something is there, but he is unable to classify that, or he is unable to understand that. Okay, and then if we move again, we move forward, the next paragraph, what he says that through the window I see no stars. Okay, through the window he sees no star, something more near, thou deeper within the darkness is entering the loneliness. And now the first stage, he said there is something there but he hasn't understood. Okay, and then he's saying that through the window I see no star. Okay, when he's trying to think, so this is metaphorically speaking, when he's trying to think, he's not seeing any star from the window. Okay, while there is something more near, so these are not the star, which is something more near, that is there, thou deeper within the darkness is entering the loneliness. So thou deeper within the darkness, which simply means that he still hasn't understood what it is. It is there in the darkness. Okay, but it is quite nearer to what it was previously, and it is entering the loneliness. Loneliness is his personal, loneliness is imagination which is empty, or loneliness is his physical surrounding. Okay, which is metaphorically compared to his imagination or his mind. Okay, so through the window I see no star, something more near, thou deeper within the darkness is entering the loneliness. Okay, so when he looked outside the window he couldn't see any stars, but at the same moment he feels that there is something near, not quite far away like star, something near, which is, although is deeper, okay, there in the darkness, still not visible, but at the same time it is entering to the loneliness. Loneliness is brain, where the idea has to come. And the next moment what he writes, cold delicately as the dark snow, a fox's noses touches twig leaf, to eyes serve a moment that now and again, now and now and now. And now he says, cold delicately as the dark snow, a fox's nose touches twig. So two eyes serve a moment that now and again, now and now and now. So basically what he is trying to say, that in the first paragraph there was something alive he couldn't understand, and then he can see that something is entering to his mind, some idea is entering into his mind, and then he finally sees. What he sees? He sees a fox nose touching the twig and leaf. So he is comparing his inspiration, his thought, his idea, from where the poetry will be generated to with a fox. Okay, and cold delicately as the dark snow, a fox's nose touches twig leaf. Okay, two eyes of a moment that now again, now and now and now and now. Okay, and please note that there is no full stop. So if there is no full stop, this simply means that it is continued. Okay, and this is enjambment. Okay, we shall see there is a separate word for this, enjambment or enjambment. Okay, and which means where there is a continuity of the flow of idea through one paragraph to another paragraph, because that the poet does not use comma or a full stop. So cold delicately as the dark snow, a fox's nose touches twig leaf, two eyes serve a moment that now and again, now and now and now. So he is comparing the He is comparing the fox nose to the dark snow which has just touched the twig and the leaf, and two eyes serve a movement. So he is also able to see the eyes and it is approaching towards him. Okay, so him is towards him means it is the thought of the writer, it is the brain of the poet. Okay, so he has compared the idea and a thought to the fox. Now he is able to look at some aspects of the idea which was not visible in the first paragraph, and in the second paragraph it was felt it was entering, and in the third paragraph he finally sees but just partial of, he sees the partial physicality of his idea, and which was depicted as the fox. Okay, and only eyes and nose was visible, and that now and again, now and again, now, which simply means it is moving forward. This thought is moving forward to the poet, towards the poet. And then the fourth paragraph is sets near neat prints into the snow between trees, and verily a lame shadow lags by stump and in hollow of a body that is bold to come. Now it says as the fox moved, and it is printing the paws, okay, onto the snow, and the fox is moving between the trees. Okay, verily a lame shadow lags by the stump and in hollow of a body that is bold to come. And then he says the fox is cautious. Bold to come means the fox is cautious, and the shadow is lame, as because the fox has been positioned in such a way that it is lame. Okay, and cautiously, okay, cautiously the shadow also moves with the fox, as because it is also moving cautiously. Okay, and this time he sees, okay, he sees the shadow, he sees the print of the paws on the snow. Okay, and he sees that the fox is cautious at the same time. Okay, and then in the fourth paragraph, a crossing clearings, an eye, a widening deepening greenness, brilliantly concentratedly coming about its own business. So now in this part poet says across clearings an eye. So he looked at the, in the fourth paragraph itself, the fox was coming, fox has come near to him. Okay, more as compared to the previous meaning of the paragraph, what has been explained in the previous paragraph. And then across clearings an eye, a widening deepening greenness, brilliantly concentratedly coming about its own business. So across clearings an eye, a widening deepening greenness, brilliantly concentratedly coming about its own business. So what is saying? Across the clearings is the place where there is no, okay, no, I think there is no snow, and an eye, there were two eyes, but those two eyes has come so much close to the poet that it seems that it is just one eye, or in other words the two eye has merged to become one eye. Okay, and it is widening deepening greenness, it is brilliantly concentrated coming about its own business. Okay, so you can understand, like, those two eyes has become one eye, and it is widening deepening greenness. Okay, and it is getting wider and wider as it is coming closer to the poet, and it is brilliantly concentratedly coming about its own business. Okay, so it is brilliant and it is concentrated, and it has its own business to do. Okay, so it comes in such a way that it has its own business and which is not related to the poet. Okay, so this is the description till the fourth paragraph. Like in the first paragraph it was seen that something is there, some idea is there, and in second paragraph the poet believes that the idea is entering, and in third paragraph he sees some part of ideas which is depicted by the fox, and in the fourth paragraph he says the idea is further moving towards him, and the fifth paragraph the idea has just come to his brain, towards his brain, and he can see that the two eyes has merged to the one eye only, and this is how it is. And in the last paragraph he says very beautiful thing, that till with a sudden sharp hot stink of fox it enters the dark hole of the head, the window is starless still, the clock ticks, the page is printed. So this is what he again talks about. Like in the sixth and the final paragraph he says that with the stink of fox, with the smell of fox, the idea get inside the hole of the head, and this is just metaphorically it is presented. So this poem itself through is filled with the metaphor, so that something alive is the fox, entering the loneliness is again the fox, and then in the third paragraph he is directly referred to all these things as fox, and the fox is coming near, and when the fox comes too close the two eyes of the fox become one, okay, as because it is too close, and then fox jumps and gets inside his brain through the dark hole, and he can also feel the smell of the fox, and the window is starless still, okay, the window is still starless, and the clock is ticking, the page is printed. Okay, so this is all about the poem. So basically it is depiction of how an idea gets into the brain of the poet, okay, and then after understanding that idea the poet writes the poem. So he has compared the idea to the fox, because there are plenty of ideas, okay, there are plenty of things, okay, which is there, which is glittering all the time, and once it is got into the brain, what is caught by the brain, it is then written to the page. Okay, so let us once again revise. In the first paragraph he believes that something is alive, okay, and alive, what is something? Something is the idea. And in the second paragraph he believes that there is something which is entering the loneliness, okay, something which is disturbing him, okay. So first is the idea, and which is just the abstract format, and when the abstract format of idea is realized, it disturbs the loneliness of the poet, and then he sees the idea, just the face and two eyes, and he says that idea is a fox, okay, he has metaphorically used it. And then the fox comes cautiously towards him, and then what happens, the fox comes right in front of his eyes and becomes one eye, the two eyes of the fox become one eye, which is getting widened, and then the fox jumps, okay, the fox jumps and gets into his head through the hole of the head, which is probably how the idea gets into the mind. And the clock still ticks and the page is printed. Page, what kind of page is printed? The poetry is printed or written by the poet. So this is the theme. The theme is how poet gets an inspiration, okay, and how he writes up poetry. Now let us see the figures of speech. There is alliteration, okay, alliteration. Let us find the page is printed is alliteration. Sudden sharp hot stink, okay, it is alliteration. And then there is shadow lags by stump, can be alliteration, okay. Now and now, that is alliteration, of course. And next is personification. So the idea has been personified, okay. So idea can move like a fox, idea has a life, idea has a nose, idea has eyes. So this is personification. Oxymoron. Oxymoron is the exact opposite of a word, like sets neat prints into the snow, and I'm sorry, this is not delicately as the dark snow. Snow cannot be dark, right? So this is oxymoron, where the opposite qualities are depicted to some meaning. So dark snow is, snow cannot be dark, it is oxymoron, that is why it is said dark snow. And then there is the last one, enjambment. So it is basically the continuation. Okay, if you can look at this paragraph, after now there is no full stop, and after come there is no full stop, and business there is no full stop, and then at the last paragraph there is a full stop. So it is the carrying out or carrying away of the meaning from, flowing of the meaning from, or rather flowing of the meaning from one paragraph to another paragraph. Okay, so this was all about the poem The Thought Fox. It is written by Ted Hughes, and Ted Hughes married Sylvia Plath. She is again a very famous confessionist poem. One of her one of her poems is The Mirror, which is classical poem, and Daddy is again a poem, confessionist poem, which is written by Sylvia Plath. And Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes has very severe emotional fights in their lives. Okay, their marriage did not go as expected, and this affected Sylvia Plath as well as Ted Hughes. Okay, so The Thought Fox again is the poetry where Ted Hughes tried to explain using a totemic, that is the fox, to explain how the idea becomes a poetry, how the idea is got from the nature. Okay, when idea enters, when the abstraction of idea enters in the poet's mind, the poets get agitated. Okay, and then the things happens as it should. Okay, so so this was the simpler explanation. The theme, there is no proper rhyme scheme. We have seen some figures of speech. There are similes as well in the poem. Metaphors, there are plenty of metaphors. In fact, this is a metaphorical poem. And yes, alliteration we have seen, personification I have explained, oxymoron we have seen one of the explanation, one of the examples of oxymoron, that is dark snow. And enjambment is the continuation of idea from one paragraph to another paragraph, because there is no pause or full stop. Okay everyone, so let us finish this session, conclude this session, and I'll be launching another set of webinar very soon, so we can launch here in this channel. We'll launch in this channel as well as on our Facebook page and everywhere on the Facebook pages across internet. So thank you everybody for giving your time for this webinar. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being part of this webinar. Thank you so much.